Predictions of futuristic transportation has had many forms, including jetpacks, teleportation, and flying cars. All three have been around for many years. Pictured here are the Jetsons in their flying car, an animated family made popular from a TV show in the 60s. The Jetsons were a result of decades of optimism for the future and possible technologies. This TV show represented all the high hopes that were present during that time period. But don't be mistaken, flying cars were for more than cartoon families. Isaac Asimov, a famous sci-fi writer, had many predictions for the future in his 1964 article for the New York Times, and one of them was the flying carpet car pictured here. This type of car was actually closer to a hover car, but the idea remains the same. Take away the wheels and have it fly. Everybody knew that's what would become of cars in the future, and it was only a matter of time. The reason that the idea of flying cars has been around for so long is because it seems so reasonable. Exist technologies for cars, and to fly. Why not combine them both clock radio style? The predictions came in many styles and in many forms. This issue of Popular Mechanics features two different ideas of personal flying transportation. This time period was seen as the high point of futuristic technology. Perhaps the most famous flying car to make an appearance on the big screen is Doc and Marty's flying and time-traveling DeLorean in the 1989 classic Back to the Future. While the public certainly viewed time travel as impossible, during this time there were still many assumptions that by the 21st century, most cars would be flying. It was the next step in an industry that had been exploding since Henry Ford revolutionized the field. Even though the idea of flying cars have been around for quite some time, that doesn't mean that it has gone to the wayside recently. Flying cars are still seen as a technological possibility that is coming someday. Futurama is an animated TV show that takes place in the year 3000. 1,000 years produced a lot of change, and one of those drastic changes is flying cars that can double as spaceships as well. Futuristic predictions, or futurology, is still a prominent part of our society. It's a way of having optimism and hoping that the future will be better. Its fingerprints are all over our lives, from it being one of the most popular pages of Reddit to one of our current presidential candidates, John Kasich, promising the invention of flying cars if elected. This photo shows that one of Terra Fugia's advertisements for its TFX flying car, which they are displaying as the future car of tomorrow. It is seen in almost every futuristic prediction of flying cars that even though they can fly anywhere, they still choose to go one after another, like shown here in this clip of Star Wars Attack of the Clones. This futuristic city has flying cars following roads in the air with everyone flying at the same height. This probably says more about human capacities for prediction more than what cars will be able to do. It's hard for us to imagine traveling in any other way. While every prediction for flying cars has failed so far, there are many other transportation predictions that seem very close to being a part of everyday society. The self-driving car is one of those. Predicted early on, along with the flying car, self-driving cars allow the driver to plug in a destination, then sit back as the car does all the work, allowing you to go at faster speeds and of the limit of reaction time no longer a problem. This image here shows one of Isaac Asimov's predictions that features a family of four sitting around a game board as the car does the driving to the destination. Much like the flying car, predictions of self-driving cars pressed on into the late 20th century and into the 21st. The movie I, Robot was released in 2004 but takes place in 2035. It features many futuristic predictions, including the car seen here. This Audi, which is a great product placement, can go more than 200 miles per hour and allows for the removal of human error when driving a car. Self-driving cars are no longer a technology of the future, but instead the present. Many companies are currently working on self-driving cars and trucks, with Google leading the way with its own model and modifications of other cars. The one shown here is a modified Lexus that is the talk of the town at every car convention, and one that gains momentum and popularity every day. Of course, cars aren't the only way of transportation. Another popular futuristic prediction of travel is the jetpack. The photo seen is another one of the Jetsons, as the youngest family member is using his jetpack to travel around. Jetpacks have been a staple of science fiction for as long as flying cars have, and can be seen in movies from all decades, from the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s and 21st century. James Bond's movies are often revered for the use of spy technology, way cooler and more futuristic than any current technology. The jetpack is a perfect example of that, as seen here, worn by Sean Connery on location for the 1965 film Thunderball. The pack he is wearing is an actual jetpack produced by Bell Aerosystems in the U.S. Army. The jetpack worked but could only stay airborne for 200 seconds and traveled just over 100 meters, so the government didn't see it as a viable option for transportation and scrapped the project. We've already discussed the most prominent prediction of travel in Back to the Future, but what about another one that usually gets little attention? Hoverboards are depicted as the best way to get around town for young people, similar to modern-day bikes and skateboards. Shown here are 3 people riding the board, which allows them to go over grass, gravel, and even water. This was seen as revolutionary, and another one of those technologies that would be around by 2015. Sadly, anyone who knows hoverboards in 2015 will be disappointed. Today's hoverboards aren't hoverboards at all, but consist of 2 wheels that at no point get off the ground. The desire to have a futuristic hoverboard is so great that the company merely has to use the name and people went crazy over them. This image showed Mike Tyson, the famous boxer, riding a hoverboard and subsequently falling off it. Perhaps the most far-fetched and futuristic means of transportation is teleportation. Teleportation has been theorized for many years, but we now know how unreasonable it is. The most famous appearance of teleportation on TV is the beaming teleportation in Star Trek. There are a generation of sci-fi fans who view teleportation as the holy grail of futuristic transportation. Another overestimated futuristic assumption of technology would be space travel. The 1960 sci-fi TV show Lost in Space is supposed to take place in 1997, when the United States is first attempting to colonize deep space. Because so many future predictions involve colonizing or traveling space, it can often be difficult to talk about futuristic travel without mentioning space. 2001: A Space Odyssey is another example of how future predictions of space travel may sometimes be a little unreasonable in science fiction. This 1968 thriller features astronauts traveling to Jupiter to check out a mysterious black monolith. While some of the ideas are entertaining, we are now 15 years past when the movie was supposed to take place and are nowhere near that level of space travel. One of those popular movies of 2015 was the sci-fi thriller Interstellar. Interstellar has been praised for its scientific accuracy and portrayal of space travel. And while what they do isn't possible in current day, many scientists agree that it may be possible one day, and it starts the process of turning science fiction movies into more science than fiction. Science and technology are advancing every day, and the excitement of going to Mars or other planets keeps the population excited and interested. SpaceX is doing some amazing work, and many people believe that with the rise of the private sector in space travel, flying in space may be as easy as it is to board a plane. Most scientists and engineers today often attempt to deal with one problem at a time, like fuel efficiency or comfort. Futuristic concept cars are very different than what they were 50 years ago, and who knows if they will actually look like what we expect them to in 50 years. But that's the fun of it, guessing and letting your imagination take over the creative process.